guys, welcome back to Southern Gal True Crime. If this is your first time here, thanks for dropping in and hanging out with me for a little bit. I decided to do an extra video this week. I usually just have time to. I would love to do videos 5 days a week, but with my real job, I don't have time, so I just have to get videos recorded as I have time. But I definitely always bring Mondays. I have Missing Person Monday. Friday, I have the case of the week. And sometimes on Wednesdays, if there's any breaking news and any true crime cases, current cases, I'll bring you that information. And then sometimes I'll just do a video like today, true crime related. Today we're going to be looking at some infamous true crime. And on my channel, I usually don't do a whole lot of videos of the bigger, well-known, infamous cases. I try to stick to the lesser-known cases and lesser-known missing persons, because every case, no matter how big or small it is, and to me, all cases are big and important. I try to bring attention to the lesser-known cases that don't get a lot of media attention and YouTube attention and things of that nature. But every once in a while, it is interesting to take a look at some of these more well-known cases. So today we will be taking a look at Robert Hansen, who is also known as the Butcher Baker. I'm sure if you're watching this, you're interested in true crime, and you've probably heard of the Butcher Baker. And the video will not be focused entirely on Robert Hansen, because to me, the most important thing, people in these cases are the victims. But I will give you his background just for anybody out there who has not heard of this case, has not heard of Robert Hansen and his crimes. But we will and then we will go into his known victims and his victims that he possibly, or some cases that he possibly might be linked to. So I'll give you all that. But first, as always, I always feature a missing person of the night. Let me get back to the right slide. And this information comes from neverforgottenar.org, which is the Arkansas Missing Persons Database. And tonight's missing person is Mariah Austin. She is only 16 years old. She's a black female, 5'10", 180 pounds, with brown hair or brown eyes, and it says pink hair, although in the picture here she's got dark hair. She went missing on October 14th. I'm trying to think of what day it is today. About 3 weeks ago, if I'm got my dates right. And she went missing from Texarkana, Arkansas. So if you have any information about Mariah or her disappearance, please contact. It says attention Detective Jason Hawk at 903-798-3116. As always, I always put a link to this information in the description box, and I'm going to try to remember to start putting it in the comment section, pinning it to the top, so it might be a little easier to find just by looking into going into the comments instead of having to go into the description of the video. So I implore you, please share this information anywhere and everywhere you can, because the more people that see it, the better, and try to find this young lady, or at least generate some information. And most importantly, just to get her name out there to hopefully make some progress in her case. All right, with that very important information taken care of, as I said, we're going to be talking about Robert Hansen, also known as the Butcher Baker. So Robert Christian Bose Hansen, known in the media as the Butcher Baker, he was an American serial offender. Between 1971 and 1983, he abducted, assaulted, and took the lives of at least 17 women in and around Anchorage, Alaska. And as far as because I've looked into I've been interested in true crime for a while. And I haven't really come across a lot of offenders or a lot of cases from Alaska. I'm sure there are some out there that I just haven't found. So anybody out there watching, if you know of any other ones, please leave them in the comments. I'd be interested to know. So his MO was that he hunted many of these victims down in the wilderness with a Ruger Mini 14, which is a firearm or a knife. He was arrested and convicted in 1983 and was sentenced to 461 years without the possibility of parole. He did pass away in 2014 of natural causes due to lingering health conditions at the age of 75. So he was born in Esterville, Iowa on February 15th, 1939. He was the oldest of two children. His mother was American. His father was Danish. His father owned a bakery in the town, hence the nickname the Butcher Baker. The family moved to Richmond, California in 1942, but they returned to Iowa in 1949, reason unknown. In his youth, it says he was painfully shy. He had a stutter, severe acne that left him permanently scarred. So, throughout his childhood and adolescence, he was described, you hear this a lot, as being quiet. He was a loner. He had a difficult relationship with his domineering father, it says. He started to practice hunting and archery, and it says he found refuge in these activities. In 1957, he enlisted in the United States Army Reserve and served for 1 year before being discharged. I said I didn't do a deep dive research into his history because I'm going to concentrate more on his victims, but unknown why he was discharged. Anybody out there that knows, please leave a comment. He later worked as an assistant drill instructor at a police academy in Iowa. And while he was there, he began a relationship with a younger woman, and he married her in the summer of 1960. So some of his, the beginning of his criminal career. In December of 1960, he was arrested for burning down a school bus garage, and supposedly he did this as revenge for his unpopularity in high school. So, now I was considered unpopular in high school. I hung out with the weird kid. Well, I was kind of a mix, I guess. I was considered a weird kid. I was a band geek. I was one of the kids that listened to the heavy metal music and wore the black t-shirts and all that. So I wasn't popular, but we had our little group of friends, and we made it. We didn't care whether anybody else liked us or not, frankly. And I'm sure, as you know, everybody's been in high school knows how cliquish high school is, and even into adulthood, I've learned how cliquish adults can be. But that is off subject, so we'll get back to Mr. Hansen. But I said that to make the point that I'm sure there was a lot of unpopular kids in high school that did not burn down bus garages or anything of that nature. So I think he had a little bit more going on besides just his feeling of being unpopular. So he served 20 months of a 3-year prison sentence in the penitentiary. During his incarceration, he was diagnosed with manic depression with periodic schizophrenic episodes. So like I said, he did have some other stuff going on. The psychiatrist who made this diagnosis noted that Hansen had an infantile personality. and he was obsessed with getting back at people he felt had wronged him. Now, we've heard this with other offenders. They feel like the world is against them, the world owes them everything, and they're going to do everything in their power that people that they perceive have done them wrong. So Hansen's first wife filed for divorce while he was in prison. Over the next few years, he was jailed several more times for petty theft. He moved to Anchorage with his second wife, whom he had 2 children with. And in Anchorage, like we all hear, when any offender is caught, he was well liked by his neighbors, and apparently he set several local hunting records. So apparently he was into the hunting. So now we get into the more serious stuff. In December of 1971, he was arrested twice. First arrest was for abducting and attempting to assault an unidentified housewife, and then for assaulting an unidentified prostitute. He pleaded no contest to assault with a deadly weapon in the offense involving the housewife, and the assault charge involving the prostitute was dropped as part of the plea bargain. I don't know if that was part of the plea bargain with the first offense or if it was completely separate. But in any case, so he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. After serving 6 months of his sentence, he was placed on a work release program and was released to a halfway house. Now, said before, I have faith in our justice system. But if he, in the span of a month, December of 1971, he was arrested twice for abduction, attempted assault, and so on, a deadly weapon. And after serving 6 months of a 5-year sentence, he was put on a work release program and released to a halfway house. But that's the way it works sometimes. So he pleaded guilty to larceny after he was caught stealing a chainsaw from a local store. Don't want to know, think about what he had plans for the chainsaw. So he was sentenced to 5 years in prison and required to receive psychiatric treatment for his bipolar disorder. But once again, the Alaska Supreme Court reduced his sentence and he was released with time served. So this is just, to me, in my opinion, an unfortunate set of circumstances that led to him getting in and out of prison and eventually being out of prison to go on to commit his atrocious crimes that he's committed. So he is believed to have began his crimes around 1972. His MO was to pick up a prostitute in his car, force her at gunpoint to his home, where he would assault her. He would then take her out to a secluded area and hunt her as if she were wild game before shooting or stabbing. So he's obsessed with hunting, which go back to, it said when he was a youth adolescence, he became interested and involved in hunting and archery. So apparently he was obsessed with hunting things, not only animals, but people, unfortunately. Beginning, we're going to go into now how the events leading up to his eventual arrest. So, Detective Glenn Floth of the Alaska State Troopers had been part of a team investigating the discovery of several bodies in and around the Anchorage and Seward areas. The first to be found, the first of the bodies was found by construction workers near Eklutna Road. Now, this victim was dubbed Eklutna Annie. And this is the picture you see there on the left is an artist drawing of what she possibly could have looked like, because she has never been identified. Later that year, the body of Joanne Messina was discovered in a gravel pit near Seward. And in 1982, the remains of 23-year-old Sherry Morrow were discovered in a shallow grave near the Nick River. Now, keep the Nick River in the back of your head, because that name and that area is going to come up a lot. So this detective Floth believed that all three of these victims had been killed by the same perpetrator. So we all know, I'm assuming if you're interested in true crime, follow true crime, you know who John E. Douglas is. He is a special agent with the FBI. He's a profiler. So Detective Floth requested help. He wanted an offender profile based on the 3 victims that were discovered. And now pay attention to, remember, and we'll go back and discuss it if I remember to. Just pay attention to Douglas's profile, what he says about the possible offender. So Mr. Douglas thought that the offender would be an experienced hunter with low self-esteem, have a history of being rejected by women. He would be compelled to keep souvenirs of his crimes, such as a victim's jewelry. He also suggested that the assailant might stutter. And using this profile, Floth investigated possible suspects until he reached Hansen, who definitely fit the profile. So if you go back, remember he, in his profile, Douglas says he would be rejected by women, have low self-esteem. So he burned, if you go back and we talked about Hansen, burned down the school bus garage because of his unpopularity in high school. So to me, that would fall under the being rejected and low self-esteem. Mr. Douglas said the assailant might also stutter. Robert Hansen did stutter. And there was something else. Now I can't remember. I guess it was the experienced hunter, low self-esteem, being rejected, and the stutter. All fit, Hansen all fit that profile. And also the fact that he owned a plane. Now, I don't know why at the time that he fit the profile because he owned a plane. I'm assuming because of where, when they later, well, that was before. Maybe because of where the bodies were found, you'd have to have a plane to get there. I'm just assuming. But if any of you have any ideas or comments, please leave them in the comment section. Just always be respectful of the victims' families, and each other. So, supported by Paulson's testimony, which we will get, that was one of the victims who survived. She survived an attack by Robert Hansen, and we will get to her later. So, supported by her testimony and John Douglas's profile, Detective Floth and the Alaska PD secured a warrant to search Robert Hansen's plane vehicles in his home. So on October 27th, 1983, investigators uncovered jewelry belonging to some of the missing women. We go back to another part of Douglas's profile was that he would keep souvenirs such as jewelry. as well as they found an array of firearms in a corner hideaway of Hansen's attic, which you can see the bottom left picture there is the hideout he had for his firearms. And they also found, which is the top picture, an aeronautical chart with 37 X marks on it. And they found this hidden behind the headboard of his bed. Now, many of these marks match sites where bodies had been found previously, and then others were discovered later at locations marked on Hansen's M map. And I think I did include a picture. I hope I remember to include it in one of these slides. Hansen had drew out. It's kind of like this aeronautic, or maybe this one. I have a better picture of it where he had circles and numbers and such, where he had where some of the bodies were located. So when confronted with all this evidence that was found in his home, at first, of course, he denied that he denied it as long as he could. But he eventually, surprise, surprise, he began to blame the women for these crimes, and he tried to justify his actions. Now, I don't know. Like I said, I haven't done deep dives into his psyche and because I want to concentrate more on the victims, but not surprised that he tried to most serial offenders are narcissists and psychopaths, and it's never their fault. They made me do it, she made me do it, whatever the case may be. But we all know how their mind works. So he eventually confessed to each item of evidence as it was presented to him. He admitted to a spree of attacks against Alaskan women starting in 1971. And his earliest victims were girls or young women, usually between the ages of 16 and 19, who were not prostitutes, unlike the victims that led to his discovery. So apparently when he first started out with just maybe girls he knew, maybe went to school with. I'm not sure. I'm just speculating. And then he moved on to prostitutes. So he is known to have assaulted and essayed over 30 Alaskan women, and to have taken the lives of at least 17, ranging in ages from 16 to 41. Although it says based on evidence, law enforcement suspect that he took the lives of at least 21 victims. And of these 18 women victims, he was only formally charged with 4. Sherry Morrow, Joanna Messina, Eklutna Annie, and Paula Goulding. And he was also charged with the kidnapping and assault of Cindy Paulson. And that's the one that testified. I don't know if she testified in court, but she did I think she did testify in court, but I know she went to the police and reported him to the police. And that was a part of what led to him getting arrested. All right, so now we're going to move on to the victims, which, like I said, in all these cases, the victims are the most important part of these cases. So first we have Celia Beth Van Zanten. She was just 18 years old. She was at home with 2 of her 3 older brothers on December 22nd, 1971. The 3 of them shared a house on Nick Avenue in South Anchorage, which is close to Northern Lights Boulevard, with their older brother and cousin. So apparently all of them lived in the same house, because it says her parents resided in a different home in Anchorage. So in the late evening, Beth had left her house. She walked a few blocks to the nearby Bilo supermarket. It said the supermarket closed at 9, and she left there around 8:30, or between 8:30 and 8:40. She left at 8:30, and between 8:45 and 9 p.m., a witness saw her go to. I'm getting confused here. I'm getting out of place. The BI-LO closed at 9. She left at 8:30. Between 8:45 and 9, a witness spotted Beth go to the BI-LO at around 9. That's confusing. But anyway, a neighbor claimed to have spotted her on Northern Lights Boulevard. So I'm assuming that was between 8:45 and 9 is when the witness saw her on the boulevard. Sorry, I'm trying to make sense of this. A lot of this doesn't make sense. And I have all my sources where I got this, but it says she never reached the BI-LO. So, okay, so I'm confused about whether she actually made it to the BI-LO. It says she did, and then she didn't. But regardless, we'll move on. Her disappearance wasn't reported until 2 days later. And on December 25th of 1971, her body was discovered at, I'm going to butcher these names. I apologize in advance. Her body was discovered at Chugach State Park, which is close to Anchorage. Trigger warning. I forgot to say trigger warning at the beginning of this because I'm going to keep it as least graphic as possible, but still trigger warning. Her chest had been sliced with a knife, and she had been bound and subjected to SA. She had been dumped, still alive, into a deep ravine before passing away from exposure. So, unfortunately, it sounded like she suffered, or, well, most definitely suffered, but she did not pass away immediately. I don't know how long she was in the ravine before she succumbed to the exposure. But being in Alaska in December, I would assume that it would be very, very cold, and probably would have been very quick. Okay, so according to forensic evidence, she attempted to climb back up the slope, but she was unable to do so due to her bindings. So God bless her. She tried her best to make it back up the ravine to get help, but unfortunately she didn't make it. So Hansen has been accused of taking her life because one of the X's on his aircraft map apparently matched where she was found at. But of course, he denied responsibility for both her and other crimes because apparently they were not involved in prostitution. So apparently he would own up to prostitutes that he killed, but not ones that weren't prostitutes, which kind of, in my opinion, gives a little insight into his thinking. Unfortunately, maybe he thought that prostitutes were not, that just infuriates me. It doesn't matter what you do in life, what your profession is, nobody deserves to be killed or die that way. So I'm just assuming that he thought because they were prostitutes that they didn't matter and that he could just do whatever, which infuriates me. But I will move on and not get on my soapbox. So next we have Megan Siobhan Emmerich. She was 17 years old. She vanished on July 7th, 1973 in Seward, Alaska. She was last seen leaving a dorm laundry room while attending the boarding school Seward Skill Center. And she, of course, was not seen or heard from since. She had left behind all of her personal items, including her identification. Before contacting the police, her roommate conducted a 3-day search for her. I don't know why which I'm sure they had reasons, but she was 17 years old. She was a minor, and the roommate waited 3 days before contacting the authorities. Now, it could be, we don't know the victimology. It could be that she had a history of going off and being gone for days at a time and then coming back. Like I said, I don't know. I didn't do a deep dive. I didn't have time to do a deep dive into all the victims, but so I just got the basic information from different sources. But at any rate, of course, Hansen denied taking her life to authorities, but he did admit that he was in Seward on the day that she vanished. And once again, due to an X on the map in the Seward region, can't talk, Seward region, he is thought to be responsible because apparently, once again, the X on this map corresponded with where she was, or that she was near Seward, where she disappeared from. But apparently, at some point, he admitted to a former inmate that he transported Megan to a cabin in the Seward region that was only reachable by boat, where he took her life and buried her. So apparently, not only does he have planes, but I guess he had access to boats too. All right, next. And I apologize for moving around so much, but if you watch my Monday video, I mentioned the fact that a few days ago I took a little spill and hurt my lower back a little bit. And if I sit in one position too long, I get kind of stiff, so I have to move around. But anyway, so next we have Mary Kathleen Thiel. She was just 22 years old. She disappeared from Seward, Alaska on July 5th, 1975. Her husband was away working on the Trans-Alaska Pipeline, and she lived on Lower Point Road. She was driven into town by a friend on the day she disappeared, who then dropped her off at a local bakery. Between 1:30 and 2, a different acquaintance saw her by a waterfall on Local Point Road. Now, I don't know, because it says she lived on Lower Point Road, and I don't know if Local Point Road is a different road or if they just misspelled it. I don't know that much about Alaska, so, but if anybody knows, please leave a comment. And of course, she was never seen or heard from again. Hansen once again acknowledged being in Seward on the day that Kathleen disappeared or vanished, but once again he denied taking her life. An X on his aviation chart in the vicinity of Resurrection Bay raised suspicions about him. So apparently, this Resurrection Bay was close. The X he had in the vicinity of Resurrection Bay may have been close to where she was last seen. So apparently he did admit to taking her life and discarding her body in Resurrection Bay, well, according to a former prisoner. So I'm assuming one of his cellmates, he may allegedly have told a cellmate about this. Once again, when it comes from another prisoner, take it with a grain of salt. Sometimes other prisoners or cellmates have ulterior motives. Okay, so now we're going back to Eklutna Annie. She was discovered buried next to a power line in a wooded area, which was 1 mile south of Eklutna Lake Road. Hence, she was dubbed Eklutna Annie because she was never identified. And she was discovered on July 21st, 1980. Now, Hansen did admit to stabbing her in the back after she made an effort to flee from his car. So, God bless her for trying to get away. Now, I don't know if this is according to what Hansen said or some other means of information. But they think that she was either a topless dancer or a prostitute. Oh, well, it says according to Hansen. I would just read on. So, according to Hansen, she was either a topless dancer or a prostitute. And he also claimed that she was his first victim. Despite his claim that Annie might have come from Kodiak, Alaska, troopers think she might have arrived in Alaska via California. Her body had already been largely consumed animal predation when it was found in a shallow grave near a Clutna Lake Road. So, according to Hansen, take it with a grain of salt, because we all know that serial offenders are notorious liars. But according to him, she was his first victim. Next, we have Joanna Messina. She was just 24 years old. She had gone out to dinner. She actually went out to dinner with Hansen on May 19th, 1980. While she was working in Seward. Apparently, she had offered him I have to be careful how I phrase things, offered him her services in exchange for cash. Now, Hansen claimed that everything was going smoothly. Well, of course he would. But apparently, he refused to pay, and then he refused to release her. So he drove her and her dog to a distant place by the Snow River. He claims that he hit her with a firearm before shooting her twice, trigger warning, and shooting the dog once. He then brought her body to a gravel pit nearby and dumped her in the pit and covered her with gravel. The dog and her belongings were thrown into the woods, and the firearm was thrown into the Snow River. On July 8th, 1980, her severely decomposed body was found after, once again, animal predation. So many, and we're just getting started on these victims and possible victims. I'm trying to move through them as fast as I can, but I want to bring attention to them because victims are, I've said this 20,000 times, the victims are the most important part of these stories, of these cases. And they deserve to be remembered and never forgotten. It's the mantra of my channel, is never forget. Okay, so on June 28th, 1980, Roxanne Eastland. She was 24 years old. She vanished. She had been residing at the Budget Motel in Anchorage with her boyfriend for the previous 2 weeks before she disappeared. On that day, she had been scheduled to meet an unnamed man. Now that I think about it, when I was making these slides, you're going to start seeing a pattern of how some of these ladies disappeared, how they were lured. And I think this is the first of one of them. So on the day she disappeared, she was scheduled to meet an unnamed man downtown on 4th Avenue. And apparently she went to meet this unnamed man, and she was never heard from again or seen. And although Hansen admitted to taking her life, her body was never discovered. So we have at least the first report of a victim that was lured somewhere by an unnamed man. So keep that in mind. Next, we have Lisa Futrell. She worked at a nightclub in Anchorage. And now she met and was subsequently kidnapped by Robert Hansen on September 6, 1980. She was 41 years old. She failed to return home following her September 7th shift at the club that she worked at. Her two younger housemates reported her missing, and her body was discovered on May 9th, 1984, buried next to a gravel pit. Once again, we have a gravel pit south of the former Nick Arm Bridge. So there's apparently a Nick River, and then a Nick Arm River, and a Nick Arm Bridge. Because that I noticed when I was researching this and putting all the information together, this Nick River and Nick Bridge and Nick this and that kept coming up. So apparently that was his dumping ground. Sorry, I had to get a drink. I apologize. All right. Next, we have Sherry Morrow. She was just 23 years old. She was a dancer and apparently she would, for $300, she would pose for nude images. Pay attention to this. She had told friends that she was seeing a photographer on November 17th, 1981. She was never seen again. So we had a couple slides back, or the last slide, we had a victim that was lured or was going to meet an unnamed man. Now we have a young lady who was going to meet a photographer and was never seen again. So a shallow grave was discovered by hunters on the banks of the Nick River, once again, which borders Anchorage, on September 12th, 1982. Morrow Sherry, who was reported missing a year earlier, was identified from the remains. She had received 3 GSWs to the back, and cartridges discovered close to the body revealed that a .223 Ruger Mini 14 hunting rifle had been used in the crime. So we go back to earlier that Robert Hansen owned a Mini 14 Ruger. And it says an odd feature was that although the body was found fully clothed, there were no bullet holes in the clothing. So this suggested, of course, that Sherry had been naked when she had been shot and had been redressed after her death and before being buried. So, like I said, I'm sorry. I keep moving around a lot, but I'm getting a little stiff. Okay. So she had been naked when she was shot, redressed, and buried. So apparently that was if Robert Hansen was, like I said, some of these are known victims and some of these are possible victims. So if this if Sherry was a victim of Robert Hansen, apparently his MO was to undress them and dress them back, at least in this case. All right, next we have Andrea Mona Fish Altieri. She was 24 years old. And at 11 p.m. on December 2nd, 1981, she was last seen boarding a taxi to go to the Boniface Mall, which is in Anchorage. She intended to meet, once again, she was intending to meet an unnamed male for a photo shoot and to perform exotic dances. So apparently, allegedly, if this is Robert Hansen, his MO, one of his MOs of how he lured these women and abducted them was to pose as a photographer, say, hey, I'm going to take pictures of you and things of that nature. When authorities searched Hansen's house, several of Andrea's possessions, including her fish necklace, going back once again to John Douglas's profile, is he said that the offender would most likely keep trophies such as jewelry. So if they found his in Hansen's house, they found her necklace. Hansen claimed that after he met her, he threatened her with a firearm, abducted her, blindfolded her, handcuffed her near the Nick Arm Bridge. Once again, there he unbound her and essayed, and he killed her with a firearm after she retaliated. So we have another victim that tried her best to get away and to fight back. So God bless them for that. So after he took her life, he stole her necklace, and he weighted a duffel bag with gravel, tied it to her, threw her off the bridge into the river, and her body was never found. So they're just going off this scenario based off what he told them. So once again, we'll take it with a grain of salt. He may be telling the truth, he may not be, but regardless, she has never been found, unfortunately. All right. Next, we have Sue Luna. She was a 23-year-old dancer. Now, she voluntarily agreed to a voluntarily agreed to a $300 photo shoot with a nightclub patron. So on May 26th of 82, she met Robert Hansen in a diner parking lot in Anchorage. The following day, she was reported missing. Hansen had abducted and taken her life. Then he buried her in the Nick River. She was discovered on April 24th, 1984. And I'm assuming, according to what Hansen told authorities, he had her flee into the forest while hunting her like an animal while she was stripped naked. I'm not even going to call him a man. I'm going to go right to I say this in a lot of my videos, he is a monster. No doubt about it, in my opinion. And she was shot. That's how he took her life. I just cannot imagine the terror and what these ladies went through at the hands of this monster. I don't even want to call him a person either, of this monster. So that's why these victims deserve to be remembered. Just remembered in general, but particularly for what they must have went through at the hands of this person. All right, so the partial skeletal remains of Robin Pelkey, who was 19, were found on April 25th, 1984 in Palmer, Alaska, close to Horseshoe Lake. It was determined that she had been stabbed and shot. It is unknown if she was involved in prostitution or exotic dancing or things of that nature. Because apparently that's what Robert Hansen went for, was prostitutes, exotic dancers, strippers. So in October of 2021, through forensic genealogy, it was determined forensic genealogy was used to determine her identity. She had been given the moniker Horseshoe Harriet. I'm assuming because she was found close to Horseshoe Lake. Before she was identified, and early in the 1980s, she had resided in Anchorage, and she vanished, like I said, on July 19th, 1983. So I'm assuming this is one of the, because it doesn't say anything about Hansen confessing or any X's on the map. So I'm assuming this is one of the possible victims, but has not been. She was not definitively linked to Hansen. Okay, it just seems like this list is so long. It's just so sad. All these young girls and ladies that. Okay. Delenn Sugar Renee Fry or Frey. She was a 22-year-old former resident of Anchorage. She was last seen sometime in March of 1983, but she was not immediately reported missing. Excuse me. Now it says she was abducted and killed by Robert Hansen. Now I don't know if this is when he confessed to, or how they for sure know that she was his victim. She was buried as Jane Doe in an Anchorage cemetery after her body was discovered on a Nick River sandbar by a pilot who was trying out new tires, I'm assuming on the airplane. Well, duh, if he was a pilot. It's late. I'm getting loopy. Just don't pay attention to me. And this was on August 20th, 1985. It was not until 1989 that she was identified when an Alaska state trooper recognized her jewelry in a case file photo. So I take that to mean, I'm just going to assume that it was maybe a case file photo from from items that were found in Robert Hansen's home, because he took jewelry as souvenirs. So I'm just going to make that leap and make that connection that it was her jewelry that was found in his home. But I'm just assuming. All right, next we have Paula Goulding or Golding. She was 30 years old. She was a dancer in Anchorage. When on April 25th, 1983, Hansen offered her money. Don't know for what, for a photo shoot or for services. But instead he just kidnapped her. He drove her to his aircraft, shackled her, and demanded that she exit the aircraft under threat of being GSW. She fought with him. I'm telling you, these I admire these ladies. Most of them were fighters. She fought with him and attempted to get away once they reached a remote spot, according to Hansen. She fled, and he fired a firearm at her. I have to be careful what words I say, or I'll get flagged. And that's how he took her life. So on September 2nd, 1983, she was discovered on the Nick River, once again, buried in a shallow grave. She had been wounded in the back, but because, once again, her clothing was unharmed, it says, so apparently there's no bullet holes in her clothing. It is possible, it says, that she was shot while unclothed, and then she was clothed before being buried. So that's what two that were apparently naked and shot, reclothed before they were buried. All right, so we get to one of the surviving, or maybe the only surviving victim of Robert Hansen. So this is Cindy Paulson. She was 17. She met Robert Hansen on June 13th, 1983 in Anchorage. After agreeing to pay for her services, Hansen instead pulled a firearm on her and kidnapped her. She was taken to his home, bound, assaulted, before he took her to the Merrill Field where his airplane was. Um, so he made a mistake, and that's how, obviously, how a lot of these offenders get caught. They get cocky or think they're not going to get caught, and they will make a mistake. So, lost my place. He took her to Merrifield, where his airplane was. He left her alone in his car while he began to load his plane. He had threatened to take her life if she ran away, but she did run away. She did run away. It says toward Fifth Avenue. There, she was picked up by a passing driver, Robert Yount. And Mr. Yount took Cindy to a safe location, and shortly after called the police. So thank God that this Good Samaritan helped Cindy, saved her life, helped save her life, and in part helped play a little part and help lead to the capture of Robert Hansen. So at about the same time, a security guard at Merrill Field noticed some suspicious activity. And although he made no contact, he noted the license tag for Hansen's car, and the police located and interviewed Paulson about the attack. So this is leading up to one of the pieces of the puzzle that led to his eventual arrest. Thank goodness. So this security guard also played a part. So kudos to him, because he was aware of the suspicious activity, and he took the license plate that came back to Hansen. Right now, I think we're getting into now some of the victims that could possibly be linked to Robert Hansen. So this is Malai Larson on July 10th, 1981. She was a dancer. She was 28 years old. She was reported missing from Anchorage. And on April 24th, 1984, her body was discovered in a parking lot close to the Nick Farm Bridge. So it's the same vicinity where all the other confirmed victims of Robert Hansen were dumped. So I'm assuming that's why they put her into the possibility category of being one of his victims. We have dancer Teresa Watson. She was 22. She was last seen in Anchorage on March 25th, 1983. And I could not find, I looked so hard to find a picture of her, but all I could find was her gravestone. She informed her roommate that she would meet a man, once again, who would give her $300 in exchange for an hour or two of company. So at Scenic Lake, Hansen abducted and took her life. Says he was unable to bury her since the earth in the region was frozen. So he just abandoned her where he killed her at. And she was discovered on May 17th, 1984. So a little over a year later, she was discovered. So she, March 25th, 83 to May 84, yeah, a little over a year, she was discovered. I don't know why it was that long. It's probably a remote area, and during the winter time, a lot of people may not have went out there, so that may have been why it took a while for her to be found, but at least she was found and was laid to rest and given a proper burial. Yes, sir, may I help you? My cat has just entered the room. He's on a roll. He's running amok. So if you hear any strange noises, just ignore it. No, there he goes. He's jumping on the bed. Okay. Next we have 24-year-old Angela Lynn. Sorry. I'm laughing at my cat. He just streaked off out the door. All right, 24-year-old Angela Lynn Feder. She was last seen on 4th Avenue in Anchorage sometime in February of 1983. She was not reported missing until May, so about 3 months later. The owner of a nightclub reported that Feder, who was one of his dancers, had gone missing. And I don't know, it says Robert Hansen had kidnapped and took her life. I don't know if he confessed to it or if it was one of the X's on the map. I'm assuming he confessed. So her body was found on April 26, 1984 on a small lake near the larger Figure 8 lake. So I'm assuming she is a confirmed or mostly confirmed alleged victim of Mr. Hansen. All right, we have 20-year-old Tammy Peterson, I think it is. The logo is in my way. She was a dancer at a nightclub in Anchorage. The last her family heard from her was during a phone call on August 7th of 1982, where she claimed, once again, to have been offered money to pose for photographs. So now we're back to the lured them in with the old photography scam. So she was kidnapped, and her life was taken by Robert Hansen. Her body was not found until after Hansen confessed and pointed to her body's location on the map. So I'm assuming that's what they call his M map. You know what M stands for. I can't say it or YouTube will flag it. She was found 1.5 miles from the old Big Bridge on April 29th, 1980. All right, so I can't talk. That was his known victims and possible victims. So once he was arrested, he was charged with assault, kidnapping, multiple weapons offenses, theft, insurance fraud. And it says the last charge was related to a claim filed with the insurance company over the alleged theft of some kind of trophies. He used the proceeds to purchase his plane, which he ultimately used to transport some of these victims. And at trial, he claimed he later recovered the trophies in his backyard, but forgot to inform the insurer. So, who knows what's up with the trophies? It's kind of irrelevant, I think. So when he was arrested, he entered into a plea bargain after ballistics tests returned a match between bullets found at the crime scenes and one of his firearms. He pleaded guilty to 4 crimes that the police had evidence for, which is Goro, Messina, Goulding, and Acluna Annie. And he provided details about his other victims in return for serving his sentence in a federal prison, along with no publicity in the press. Just kind of surprising because most or a lot of offenders, they want all the publicity. They want to be in the press. They want to keep their name out there, but apparently he didn't want to. Another condition of his plea bargain was his participation in deciphering the markings on his aviation map and locating victims' bodies. So at least he did one good thing. As part of his, well, I guess he had to agree to it if he wanted to get his terms, was that one thing he had to agree to was to help locate some of his victims. So he confirmed the police theory of how the women were abducted. I have trouble saying that word, abducted, adding that he would sometimes let a potential victim go if she convinced him that she would not report him to police. That's interesting. And he indicated that he began his crimes in the early 1970s. So, if I go back, if I think he confessed to or was linked to 18, but authorities thought that it could have been upward of 21. And possibly, most likely, there are some victims that they don't know about and will never know about. That's just my opinion, my assumption. Because if he was showing signs of, if he was in his teens burning down bus garages because he felt bad because he was unpopular in school, that, in my opinion, would lead me to think that he had some young victims. Young victims. Let's just put it that way. But that's just my opinion. I don't know for sure. But please let me know your opinion in the comments. All comments are welcome. Just everybody play nice and get along, and it'll be good. Everything will be good. So he showed investigators 17 sites in and around South Central Alaska, 12 of which were unknown to investigators. And there remain marks on his map that he refused to give up, including 3 in Resurrection Bay near Seward. So I guess that wasn't part of his plea deal, that he had to give up all the sites. Authorities suspected 2 of these marks belong to the graves of Mary Thiel and Megan Emmerich, whom Hansen denied. And the remains of 12 of a probable 21 to 37 victims were exhumed by the police and returned to their families. So if there's a silver lining to this horrible case, 21 to 37 families got their loved ones back and were able to get us a sense of some closure and be able to lay them to rest. So, like I said, as I've stated before many times in this video, victims are the most important, and the victims' families, obviously. So, at least some of these families got some closure. So he was sentenced to 461 years in prison without the possibility of parole. He was first imprisoned at the United States Penitentiary in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania. In 1988, he was returned to Alaska and briefly incarcerated at Lemon Creek Correctional Center in Juneau. He was also imprisoned at Spring Creek Correctional Center in Seward until May of 2014. I don't know why he was being moved around so much. So in May 2014, he was transported to the Anchorage Correctional Complex for health reasons, and he passed away on August 21st, 2014, at the age of 75 at the Alaska Regional Hospital in Anchorage due to natural causes from lingering health conditions. I believe that's all I have. Oh, no. So we'll go back before we go. Oh, wrong way. So Robert Hansen, he is gone from this earth. Not to sound crass, but that's a good thing that he's gone from this earth, in my opinion, because was a monster, was a bad person, bad man, and he just didn't deserve, this is my opinion, didn't deserve to be on this earth any longer. But he died of natural causes, so. All right. So we'll go back to this slide now. In pop culture, I just found this. I think this is on Wikipedia. There have been a couple of movies made. There have also been, of course, numerous documentaries and books. But So there was a film called Naked Fear that came out in 2007. It says it's about a serial offender who hunts naked abducted women in the remote wilderness of New Mexico, which is loosely based on Robert Hansen. The one I found interesting, and I'm going to have to find this somewhere and watch it. In 2013, there's a movie came out called The Frozen Ground. John Cusack, who is one of my favorite actors, plays Robert Hansen. Nicolas Cage, who is another one of my favorite actors, plays Sergeant Jack Halcombe, who was a character based on Detective Glenn Floth, who we talked about at the beginning. He's the one that kind of got the ball rolling in the investigation that eventually led to the capture of Robert Hansen. And Vanessa Hudgens, I think she was one of those. Was she in the High School Musical movies? I know when my niece was younger, she watched a lot of stuff that Vanessa Hudgens was in. So anybody out there that knows for sure, let me know. Anyway, Vanessa Hudgens played Cindy Paulson, who was the surviving victim. So I'm very interested in finding this movie. Hopefully it's on one of my streaming services that I have that I can watch it. But if any of you have watched either one of these movies, especially The Frozen Ground, please leave me a comment and let me know if you watched it, what you thought of it, and if it's worth my time watching. Because when it comes to watching movies, if movies don't catch my interest and pique my interest within about the first 5 or 10 minutes, I turn it off and go to something else. But that's just me. All right, guys, we made it. Oh gosh, just a little over an hour. All right, so I hope y'all found this interesting, informative. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Like it, share it, leave me some comments, let me know what you thought. If you like this kind of videos, please do let me know too, and I'll dig up some more infamous serial offenders and won't necessarily concentrate on the offender like in this video, but just give you the background of the offender and find all the information I can about the victims and make them the focal point of the video. All right, so this is Wednesday, right? So Friday I will be back with and I hadn't even started looking to see what my case of the week is going to be for this week, but I promise, hopefully, I will get it out Friday. So until then, if you like what I do here at Southern Gal True Crime, please consider subscribing. Hit the notification bell to all so you won't miss when I upload any new videos. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I upload. Mondays and Fridays for sure. Wednesdays, it depends. But nevertheless, I'd be very much appreciated. So until Friday, please take care of yourself. Be careful out there. Take care of each other. That's the most important thing we can do is watch out for our fellow human beings. So thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.